Taking the ACT soon? Here are my 4 keys to maximizing your score. First off, meet your physical needs first. This might be the most important of all the things I talk about today, because this is the one that can absolutely sabotage the rest of your strategy, and unfortunately this is the one that seems to be overlooked quite often. There's an American psychologist named Abraham Maslow who created what is called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This pyramid here shows from bottom to top the most basic needs to the highest human needs. His theory says that before someone can worry about the higher needs, he must first fulfill the lower needs. My point in bringing this up is that something like taking the ACT is most definitely a higher need than, say, eating or sleeping, which are on the bottom here. People often struggle to focus or find motivation for tasks like the ACT when their fundamental needs haven't been adequately met. So my advice? Starting a week before you take the ACT, set a hard bedtime for yourself. You need to get at least 8 hours of sleep every night for you to be performing at your best. So I'd say if you have to wake up at 7 a.m. each morning, set a bedtime for yourself at 10 p.m. Put your phone away at that time and go to bed. Trust me, this makes so much of a difference. Your mind will be clearer and more efficient, and the test will just seem easier. Sleeping is not the only important physical thing though. Another key is having a good breakfast the morning of the test. Most of these exams are given around 8 a.m., and I hear so many students tell me they didn't eat breakfast the morning of. I guarantee this negatively affects their score. Your brain, just like any other part of the body, needs nourishment to function properly. So the morning of, make yourself some eggs, bacon, maybe even some pancakes. You want a meal that will hold you over until after the test, which will be at least a few hours. If you can feel yourself getting hungry during the test, you didn't eat a big enough breakfast. So I'll say it again. If you want to perform your best on the ACT, you need to make sure all your physical needs have been properly met. Okay, next. Familiarize yourself with the types of questions and how to solve them quickly. This is useful in all the sections, but particularly on the math and science sections. On the math, there are only a certain number of topics they can ask you about, and the more you practice, the better you'll get at those. Certain skills are very common and show up multiple times on every test. For instance, factoring, which I have a video about here. On one practice test, 5 questions required me to use factoring to find the answer, 4 of which the factoring is pretty much the only part of that question. My point with this is that these tests are standardized, which really constricts the amount and types of topics they can test on. So the more practice you do, the more patterns you'll see, and it'll become clear what type you need to work on. Again, this is useful for all the sections, but particularly on math. Third, be mindful of the time. Similar to the last point, the best way to improve at this is just simply taking practice tests with a timer and taking note of which sections you have a hard time finishing on time. A big key to this is seeing how much time you have per question on the section. This graph here shows this, so plan accordingly. On the English section, for instance, you only have about 42 seconds per question, whereas on the math section, you have about 67 seconds per question. While taking the test, check the time every now and then and see if you're on pace, and adjust accordingly. And finally, have a strategy on the reading section. Now, there is some personal preference with this one, and if you ask 5 different ACT tutors what the best strategy is, you're likely going to get a few different answers. So my advice is just to try a couple out and see what works best for you. For me, the first time I took the test, I didn't have a strategy, and I scored a 24 on the reading section. And when I took it again, after some practice and having a strategy, I scored a 35. It really does make a huge difference. So the strategy I used was to read the first paragraph of the passage with the goal of figuring out the main idea of the passage, then going straight to the questions and figuring out the answers as I went. And by the time I had gone through all the questions, I had to at least skim through the whole passage, and I could quickly check my answers from before. I know some people would not find this as efficient as it was for me, but that was what worked best for me. So again, my recommendation is just to try a few strategies out. There are plenty of resources online to find more strategies in the reading section, so I'd spend some time finding and trying those out. Alright, there are my 4 keys to scoring well in the ACT. Of course, there's a lot more to it than just those things, but this is the foundation. I'll be posting a lot more resources and strategies for the ACT and SAT, so subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks for watching and have a blessed day.